We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Mesechet Sanhedrin. This is Sanhedrin Daf 70b. The Gemara is in the middle of bringing a brisa. Rabbi Meir's opinion is that the tree that Adam Harishon ate from was a vine, she'en lach davar shemevi yilala la'adam, because there's nothing that brings wailing, that brings trouble to a person, ela yayin, like wine, and therefore we can assume that it was wine, again, that Adam Harishon took from. And the brisa continues, Rabbi Yehuda says, Chita haya, it was wheat, shein hatinok yodea likro abba v'ima, because a child is not able to call his father and his mother, and sheyitom tam dagon, until he tastes the taste of grain. And the brisa continues, Rabbi Nechemya says, Ta'ena haya, was a fig, shebedavar shekilkalu bo, because that which they ruined things, that which they committed the avera, niskanu, that's what they were fixed with as well. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, vayispru alei ta'ena, it says they took from a fig tree in order to cover themselves. And Rashi explains, Shein lach davar shemevi yilala al adam ela yayin, it's wine that brings wailing to a person. Hilkach mistabra de al yado niknas samisa, makes sense that through wine, that's where death came to mankind, uvechiyah la'olam, and crying came to the world. Shein hatinok yodea, because a child doesn't know until he has grain, he doesn't know how to call to his father and his mother. Umidukari le hadas tovara, from the fact that the tree is called the tree that knows good and bad, shma mina hainu chitim, so there's some kind of knowledge involved, so we understand that it is wheat. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk in Mishlei says, Divrei Lemuel Melech, the words of Lemuel the king, this is referring to Shlomo HaMelech, Masa Asher Yisarto Imo, this was the burden which his mother rebuked him with. Amar Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Melamed Shekafa also Imo Alo Amad, this pasuk teaches that his mother, this is the mother of Shlomo HaMelech, Basheva, she tied him, she bound him to the pillar of V'yamralo, and she said to him, and this is also from the pasuk in Mishlei, Ma bari, what is to my son, Uma bar bitni, and the son of my womb, Uma bar nidri, and the son of my vow. And what does the pasuk mean? Ma bari hakol yodim, Ma bari, what is to my son? It means as follows, everybody knows, Shavicha yarei shamayim hava, that your father feared heaven. Achshav, now that you're drinking wine, Yomru, what are people going to say? Imo garmalo, they're going to say his mother caused him to do this. This was a rebuke for the fact that Shlomo HaMelech was drinking wine. Uma bar bitni, and then she referred to the son of my womb. Kol hanoshim shel beis avicha, what that means is all of the women in your father's house, kevan shemisabros, once they became pregnant, shuv einon roos pnei hamelech, they no longer saw the face of the king. Vani, but I, when I was pregnant with you, dachakti v'nechnasti, I forced myself, I entered into the room of the king, kedei sheyeheli ben mezuraz u'meluban, that way I'd have a son who was a mezuraz, a son who was strong, and a son who was meluban, who was fair-skinned. Umar bar nidre, and the son of my oath, what does that refer to? Kol nashim shel beis avicha, all the women in the house of your father, hayu nodros, they would make a vow, yeheli ben hagan l'malchus, they wanted to have a son that was fit for the kingship. V'ani nodarti ve'amarti, but I vowed and I said, yeheli ben zoriz umemula b'torah v'hagan l'nevias, I wanted my son to be someone who is diligent and filled with Torah and fit for prophecy. And the Gemara continues, the pasuk says in Mishlei, Al l'malachim Lemuel, it's not for kings Lemuel, Al l'malachim shesuyayin, it's not for kings to drink wine, Al l'malachim amra lo, what she said to him when she said Al l'malachim, Malach eitz l'malachim, what are you doing to be like other kings, by other kings, sheshosim yayin, that they drink wine, umishtakrim, and they become drunk, v'yomrim lama lanukel, and they say, what do we need God for? And then the pasuk says, "Ula roznim a shecher," that there isn't strong drink for princes. It means to say, "Mishakal razei olam gluyim lo," the person who knows all the secrets of the world. You Shlomo HaMelech, yishte yayin v'yishtaker, you should drink wine and become drunk. And ikad yamri, and some say, "Mishakal roznei olam mashkimin lepischo," the one to whom all the princes of the world come to his door. Yishte yayin v'yishtaker, he should drink wine and become drunk. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak says, Minayin shechazer Shlomo v'hoda le'imo, how do we know that Shlomo did teshuvah and he admitted to his mother, Dechsiv, because it's written in the pasuk, Kivar anochi meish v'lo binas adam li. And the Gemara explains, Kivar anochi meish, I'm more foolish than a man. Who is that ish mi Noach? More foolish than Noach. Dechsiv, like it's written, Vayachel Noach isho Adam, it says Noach also, he planted a vineyard. V'lo binas adam li, and I don't have the understanding of Adam. Ze Adam Harishon, that's a reference to Adam Harishon. And Rashi explains that Adam Harishon, this refers to Adam Harishon, shenichshal b'yayin, again as we said above, he stumbled when it came to wine. Va'ani shasisi, and this is Shlomo HaMelech again saying that I drank Yoser Mehen, more than them, meaning more than Adam and Noach. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Achal b'chaburas mitzvah, if the ben sora umor, if he ate, and it was with a group that was performing a mitzvah, so then we say that does not count, that does not make him liable as a ben sora umor. And the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yavo says, Eino chayev at sheyochel b'chabura shekula srikin. The ben sora umor is only chayev when he eats with a group that's kula srikin, that's all idlers, it is all people who are indecent. But the Gemara says, V'anan tanan, but didn't we learn in our Mishnah, Achal b'chaburas mitzvah, Eino nasa ben sora umor. It says that if he ate with a group that's performing a mitzvah, then he doesn't become a ben sora umora. And so we can infer time of the mitzvah. The only reason that he's exempt from being liable as a ben sora umora is because it involved the mitzvah. Halav mitzvah, but if it did not involve a mitzvah, afagav delav kula srikin, even though not everyone in the group were idlers, even though there might have been some good people in the group, but it sounds like that would make him liable as a ben sora umora. And the Gemara continues and explains, Hakamash Malon, what this is teaching us is as follows. The afal gav de kula srikin, even in a situation where everybody in the group is idlers, but kevan deva mitzvah ka'asik, but as long as they're performing some kind of mitzvah, lo mimshach, we say that he's not going to be drawn after it. He's not going to be drawn after it, meaning and cause him to sin in the future, and therefore he's not liable as a ben sora umora. So the point over here is that as long as there's a mitzvah, as long as it's a group that's assembled for a mitzvah, even if you're in a situation of kula srikin, still it would not be a liability for the ben sora umora. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Achal bi'ibur hachodesh, if he eats at the celebration of the ibur hachodesh, when they declared a leap month, then also he's not liable as a ben sora umora. And the Gemara says, Lameimer, does this mean to say, the basar v'yayin masku, that they would bring up meat and wine to this meal by the ibur hachodesh? V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa, ein olin lo ela bepas dagan v'kitnias bilvad. All they brought up was pas dagan, bread of grain, and kitnias legumes. That's all they brought up. And the Gemara continues and answers, Hakamash malon, what it's teaching us is as follows. Afagav de'ein olin la ela bepas v'kitnias. Even though in general they would bring pas and kitnias, they would bring bread and legumes. V'iyu asik basar v'yayin v'achal, and he's bringing up instead, he's bringing meat and wine and eating. But kevon de mitzvah ka'asik, since he's dealing with a mitzvah, with the performance of a mitzvah, lo mimshach, again we say it's not going to draw him into sin. And Rashi explains, Achal bi'ibur hachodesh kedim mefarish l'kamon. This is going to be explained as the Gemara continues. Shein nikbatzin asara o yoser. They would gather 10 or more people. V'olin ba'aliyah, and they would go up to the second floor, the upper floor. V'ein asifa zu al lefarsim hadavar. This gathering was only for the purpose of spreading the word about the ibur hachodesh she'ivru, just to let people know that they made it a leap month. V'lo la'ayin, it wasn't to inspect, to determine whether it was a leap month. It was just to publicize the matter. To ha'ein olin ela la'ori bura, because this meal was done when? It was done on the Or Iburo. It was done on the night. The Hainu Leil Motzai Shloshim. It was done on the night after the 30th day of the month. Ukvar Mu'ubaru, at that point in time, it already is a month with an extra day. The Halo Kidshu Hayom Etzachodesh, because today would have been the regular time to be Mekadesh the Chodesh, and they didn't do that. They didn't sanctify the new moon today. It's obviously going to be tomorrow. The Kiddush Ein Sham B'Yom Machras, and they're not actually going to do a formal sanctification of the month the next day. The Hainu Yom Shlosh Vechad, which is day number 31. Limnos Al Kach Kedamin and Shalo B'Zmanu and Mekadjeno. So, like we say, that if they're being Mekadesh the Chodesh Shalo B'Zmanu, meaning on the 31st, they actually don't do a formal sanctification of the new month. And furthermore, if they were doing it, if this gathering was to sanctify the month, that would be sufficient with 3 people. That's obviously not what this gathering is. Again, this gathering was something that they did in order to publicize the matter. And the Gemara continues, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Ein olin bi'ibur hachodesh pachos me'asara b'nei adam. They don't have less than 10 people doing this ibur hachodesh meal. Ve'ein olin lo ela bepas dagan v'kitnias, and again they only bring up bread of grain and legumes. Ve'ein olin lo ela la'or iburo, and they go up there to have this meal la'or iburo on the night of the ibur, meaning to say again the night of day 31. Ve'ein olin lo b'yom, they wouldn't go up there in the daytime. Ela b'layla, they would go there at night. And Rashi explains, Yomi Buro hu Yom Shloshim. Yomi Buro again is day 30. Shanasami menu chodesh hayotze me'uber. That the day at that point in time, that month that is leaving, is becoming a me'uber. Or Yomi Buro, the night of Yomi Buro, as we said, that's Motzai Shloshim. That's the night after the 30th day. That's essentially the night of the 31st. Ul Hodia she'ivru. And again, the point is to let people know that they declared it a leap month. But the Gemara continues, Vatanya, didn't we learn in a Braisa, Ein Olin La Balayla, that they would not go up at night, Ela B'yom, they would go up during the day. And the Gemara answers to that, Kedamar Rabbi Chia bar Abba Livnei, it's like Rabbi Chia bar Abba said to his sons, Achrifu v'ulu, Achrifu Puko, go up early, and you should come out early, Kihechi delishmu b'chu inshi, so that people hear about it. And Rashi explains, Achrifu akadimu, again it means to do it early, kama charfi v'afli, Achrifu v'olu b'layla hayu yoshven sham v'osin huma, lahashmiya kol, again they would sit there at night, they would make a whole production in order that people should hear. V'kamar lahu Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Chia said to them, Lahaktim v'lalos mi ba'od yom ma'at, that when they go up there, in order to have this meal, they should go up still a little bit while it's still day, right before night. That's what it means that it was during the day. Kedei sheyiru osam ovrei derachim, kishein olin v'yafarsamu, that way people who are passing by will see them going up and the word will spread. That's what it means that they don't go up at night, rather during the day. It means they begin this whole meal, they begin it during the day. When it says you don't go up during the day, that's going on the meal itself, on the main thing, that the meal and everything that's taking place is happening at night. And then he also said, you should be hurry in order to go out. Boker, meaning in the morning, don't wait to come down. You should come down right in the morning. When people see you coming down, and it's right in the beginning of the morning, then people will realize that they've been there all night. Again, the word will spread. But if somebody just sees them coming down at regular time during the day, is just going to think that they just went up right now, and the person is not going to understand that something significant is happening. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Achal Meister Sheni B'Yerushalayim, if the Ben Sora Umora, if he eats Meister Sheni in Yerushalayim, then he will not be liable as a Ben Sora Umora. Keven Dechi Orchehu Ka'achale, since he's eating it in the normal fashion in Yerushalayim, Lo Mimshach, he's not going to be drawn after that into sin. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Achal Nevelos Utrefos Shkatzim Uramasim, if the Ben Sora Umora eats things that are not kosher, like Nevela and Trefa, or Shkatzim and Ramasim, those kinds of things that the Ben Sora Umora eats would not make him liable. And the Gemara says, Amar Rava says, Achal Besar Of, if the Ben Sora Umora, instead of eating meat from an animal, instead he eats meat from a bird, Eino Nasa Ben Sora Umora, so if he eats chicken, for example, he's not going to become a Ben Sora Umora. And the Gemara asks on Rava, V'hanon Tanan, but didn't we learn in our Mishnah, Achal Nevelos Utrefus, Shkatzim Uramasim, if he eats Nevelos and Trefus, Shkatzim and Ramasim, the understanding here, the Gemara, is that Shkatzim, as Rashi says, would refer to Ophos Tameim, would refer to birds that are not kosher. So it says in our Mishnah, eat Shkatzim Uramasim, meaning to say, again, birds that are not kosher. It says in the Mishnah, Eino Nasa Ben Sora Umora, he doesn't become a Ben Sora Umora, but the implication is Hatahorin, but it sounds like if it would be birds that are kosher, Nasa Ben Sora Umora, then he would become a Ben Sora Umora. And so therefore that contradicts what Rava said. And the Gemara answers, Ki Tanana Nami Masnisin Lahashlam. When our Mishnah says that the kosher bird would count to make him liable, that's if it's to complete what he's eating. He's already eating regular meat, and then to complete the amount, he also adds on some chicken, so that would be a different story. But if the main eating is actually just a Besar Of, if the main eating is something like chicken, so then that would not be enough to make him liable as a Ben Sora Umora. And Rashi explains, Lahashlam, that's to complete the requisite amount. Shafilu achal tartimar basar chasar kazayis mi beheimah Torah. For example, let's say he ate the tartimar, which is the requisite amount of meat, and it's from a kosher animal, but it's missing a kazayis, so he didn't eat the exact requisite amount. Ve'shalima letartimar mibsar ofos tameim, and then he completes that amount of the tartimar from ofos tameim, from birds that are not kosher. So then he's potter, he's exempt. Misham de'eno shomea bekolo shel makom techavasa b'tahorim. Because again, then he's not listening, not only not listening to his parents, he's not listening to HaKadosh Baruch Hu by eating something that's not kosher, but again, if it would be a kosher bird, just completing the requisite measure, so then he would be liable as a Ben Sora Umora. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Achal davar shu mitzvah udvar aveira. If he eats something that's a mitzvah or something that's an aveira, that also will not make him liable as a Ben Sora Umora. And the Gemara says, Dvar mitzvah, when we're saying a Dvar mitzvah, it's even tanchume avelim. It's even if he's eating at the comforting of the mourners, which is just a rabbanon, but that would also count as Dvar mitzvah. And Dvar aveira, let's say he eats in a fashion that's an aveira, tainis sibor, that would be, let's say there's a tainis sibor. Again, he's just transgressing a derabbanon. And the Gemara says, V'tayim amayin, what's the reason? reason? It's because Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Einenu shomea b'koleinu. It has to be that he's not listening to our voice. He's not listening to his parents. B'koleinu, it's specifically our voice. V'lo b'kolo shel makam. We're not talking about the voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why he's not liable when it comes to a dvar avera. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, Achal kol meichel v'lo achal basar, shasa kol mashke v'lo shasa yayin. If he ate food, but it wasn't meat, if he drank a drink that was not wine, so then he's not liable. And the Gemara says, Achal kol meichel v'lo achal basar. It says that he ate any kind of food, but it wasn't meat. And the Gemara says, Le'suye devela ke'ilis, that comes to include figs from ke'ilah, even though those are like meat, but they're not actually meat, so he's not liable as a ben sora mora. And shasa kol mashke v'lo shasa yayin, let's say he drank a drink, but it wasn't wine. Le'suye devash v'chalav, that comes to include even honey and milk, which can be intoxicating, but that is not enough to make him liable as a ben sora mora. The Tanya, as we learned in a brayso, achal devela ke'ilis, if he eats again the figs of ke'ilah, v'shasa devash v'chalav, or let's say he drinks the honey and the milk, v'nichnas lemikdash, and he would enter the Beis HaMikdash, as we're going to go on to say, that would be enough to be considered intoxicated in terms of the violation of entering the Mikdash in that state, but it is not going to be enough by Ben Sora Umora, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Aleph.